I do my absolute best coaching naked in the hot tub. It's a feature, not a bug about me. Okay. And what I, so I was, I live in Portugal, but I just spent 6 weeks in California, which is where I'm from. And I had this client who was at my country club and found me in the hot tub. And so, naked in the hot tub, she was like, "Oh my gosh, the world is so chaotic and like this is happening, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Girl, I don't experience the world as chaotic, straight up. And here's why." And she looked at me and took this pause and she said, "You are so unbelievably free." And I said, "Yeah, girl. I mean, I came by it very honestly because I had an incredibly oppressive and repressive childhood. And now, almost 50 years later, because I'm about 50 days until my 50th birthday, I live in Portugal. I run my own business. I have, six figures, multi six figures in passive income. Um, I've written 4 books, spent 6 weeks in California at my country club with my amazing kid. When I get into the hot tub, they yell, "Rich single mom." You know what I mean? Um, but by the principle of contrast that you always hear Abraham Hicks talking about, it is the case that when you know what you don't want, which is what happens when you have that kind of childhood, you also come to know what you do want at a level of clarity and fidelity that makes you very compelling and magnetic, right? In my business consulting and strategy work, I call this helping cast the vision of the UDO, the upgraded diametrical opposite of whatever pain state your client is in. Instead of pain point marketing, we market through vision and vision casting. And so in my life, it's really clear to me that 50 days before my 50th birthday, I now live the upgraded diametrical opposite, that UDO of the fear and scarcity, unworthiness, and trauma that I grew up with. And I decided I would go live in in a, I'm just gonna like let this become a conversation to share the single most powerful tool that I have used in my inner work over the last 20 years. I started using this tool on my 30th birthday. It's almost my 50th birthday. All right. And I use this tool to of step out of my not self conditioning, all that conform, produce nonsense that all of us eldest daughters, immigrant kids, first, Black to do whatever, AA student, gifted students, all of us get this really heavy dose of conform, produce conditioning that causes us to start shoving parts of ourselves down. And so 20 years ago, I started using this particular tool I'm going to share with you today and over for a few weeks. And it has been very, very potent at helping me step into gradually break free, get free, become free, be free. Okay. Because freedom is not you get there one day and you check it off and then you go do some other stuff on that list of shit you got to do before you die. Freedom is a way of being, it is ways of being. All right. And so 20 years ago, I started doing this thing I'm going to share with you now. And it has become the vehicle and way, it's become how I think and be. It has helped me step into my very big self, big dreams, radically free, radically sovereign life. Okay. So the tool I'm going to share with you, I call them breakthrough questions. Breakthrough questions. All right. And so when I was in California doing my amazing coaching naked in the hot tub, I got out of the hot tub, got dressed, and went to hang out at the pool. My daughter loves to swim, so she was at the pool, 6 hours a day all summer. I'm lying by the pool on a lounge, and this woman I know who I love, I've known her 15 years. She was a boss of mine at like an old job. She's just sharp, super sharp and delightful. I run into her and she's, and it was so fun catching up. And she says, I'm going to turn 50 soon. And I'm like, I'm turning 50 soon too, right? Let's trade notes. And this is the thing, when you get before a milestone birthday, when you're really close to a milestone birthday, everyone will ask you, what are you going to do for your birthday? Okay, what are you going to do for your birthday? So I asked her, what are you going to do for your birthday? And she's like, I was thinking about taking over this one little beautiful boutique hotel near where I used to live. And she's like, and I just have a big party for my family. She's like, Filipino, has one of those families that like makes delicious food, loves to dance, beautiful people. And so she's like, I'm thinking I'm just going to do that. She runs a big company. And she's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I was thinking I'd go on safari. I was thinking about going to Nairobi. One of my best friends is moving there right now. Maybe I'll go on safari. Maybe I'll go to Istanbul and retrace like James Baldwin's Istanbul era. Since that conversation, I have decided what I'm actually doing for my 50th birthday, and I'll tell you at the end of this video. But what I shared with her that became really powerful and the basis for this series of lives I'm going to do is that when it comes time to figuring out what it is that I'm going to do for a milestone birthday, there is a question that I asked myself on my 30th birthday for the first time. And then I asked it again on my 40th birthday, 45th birthday, and 50th birthday. I'm asking it now. That changed everything for me. Unlocked the life I came here to live. Okay. So by the end of this video, you're going to know what that question is, how I work with it, how I have answered it over the years, and what changed in my life, my business, my money when I answered this question, okay? Because here's what people get wrong about your birthday. It's really not, milestone birthdays are not supposed to be a moment of like dread and adrenaline. And they're also not supposed to be a moment of reflecting and with regret or judging what you've been doing wrong and sort of giving yourself a harsh taskmaster list of what you've got to get right fast. Okay. All of that involves judgment. It's you judging that you're not where you're supposed to be. All of that judgment creates turbulence in your system. All of that turbulence activates your inner critic. When your inner critic is activated, it keeps you small and stuck and in that treadmill energy of like, all my life is me checking off boxes that somebody else called success. Now, why do you care about all of that? One, because it feels super shitty, but two, because you can't get, if you are an Abraham Hicks person, you can't get there from there. You can't get to freedom, joy, wholeness, delicious prosperity, like life of love, electric light, the radiant magnetic body through an exercise of harsh self-judgment. You can't make the upgrades you want to make to your business, your money, your life, your whatever. So if what you want is to feel prosperous, feel timeless and tireless, birthless and deathless, which is how I'm experiencing 50, if what you want is to feel energized and eager to start your day and sovereign because you get to choose what you do and where you be and with whom you do it. If what you want is to feel like you're licking the plate of life, if what you want is to remember to put the parts back of yourself that you might have been shoving down, and dragging around behind you in this long bag, to quote the Jungian writer Bly, if what you want is to step back into your God self, goddess self, creating just you speak it and it is. Let there be light. Light shines. If you want to create like that, let me tell you something. To create like that takes sovereignty. And let me tell you something else. Ain't nobody out here standing on the street corner handing out that level of freedom. Ain't nobody out there standing on the street corner handing out sovereignty. You must claim it. And you absolutely cannot get there. You cannot claim it from a place of self-judgment. You'll have to do something different than you've done before. And because your thoughts and emotions beget your actions, you will have to think something different and be something different first. Okay, so let's talk about this breakthrough question number one, because I actually have something like 200 breakthrough questions, but I'm going to give you over this next few weeks, we'll just talk about a few of them that have been like the most powerful ones, and we'll just see where this takes us, okay? Breakthrough question number one is what I call the gift. And it started when I was about to turn 30. I got started very early in life. So I'm 50 and I have three children. One is 33, one is 32, one is 7. I had my biological child when I was 17. I started college when I was 17. I had a master's degree by the time I was 20 and a law degree by the time I was 23. All right, so I had a really early start to life, just for context. And so on my 30th birthday, people were starting to ask me, what are you going to do for your birthday? What are you going to do for your birthday? And I kind of flipped it a little bit. And I started to ask myself, what gift can I right now give my 40-year-old self? What gift can I give myself? Can I give my future self on my right now birthday? Okay. And relatively quickly, the answer dropped in like a download, super clear from Source, Spirit, God, Goddess, all that is. Okay. Get divorced. Get divorced. I was on my second marriage at that time. I asked myself again that question, get divorced was the big download. And that really was like break free from your conditioning that brought you into this relationship in the first place. Break free from fear and scarcity and unworthiness. So I had a 10-year journey, right? A couple years to get divorced, a couple years to break, to wake up from what I think of as these core trances, these ways of thinking that are so deeply wired in you don't even know that you're thinking thoughts. They're just how you see the world. And because everyone else in the world also sees the world through these lenses, or these trances of fear and scarcity and unworthiness. And there's one more we'll talk about in a minute. Because everybody else sees the world that way too, you're actually you become like the alien, the weirdo, the outlier when you don't experience life through those lenses, right? So it's challenging to question whether fear is is the way life is supposed to be. But I was about to go through or maybe I'd already experienced my time, being in the real estate business during a Great Recession. And seeing that I had done everything, since my since my teenage pregnancy, I had kind of overachieved in a really aggressive way, right? Bachelor's degree, master's degree, law degree, UC Berkeley, internship with the FBI Academy, started my own real estate business, all of these things so early. And during that time, that 2008 recession, I literally lost everything I had. Everything I had. And that was like right between my 30th and 35th birthday. I lost my real estate business. I lost my house. I lost custody of my oldest kid, who was not biologically mine. The shit hit the fan in a really intense way. And I had been doing everything right. But I realized that I had made all of my decisions in life up to then based on based on avoiding things I didn't want to have happen. So and that was like, wow, I knew there had to be more out there than this. I truly had a dark night of the soul. I had grown up very religious, but I started to study all the sacred texts and all of the sacred practices and integrate them and experience with them and come into my own knowing of my own divinity, and my own, rituals and practices and protocols and connection with source. And I was like, there has to be some other way to live my life than through the lens of what I do not want to happen. I have to come out from under the influence of this trance of fear, which was very related to scarcity and unworthiness. And so I did that work, and I did get divorced, and I did begin to travel the world. And then, by the time I was getting to my 40th birthday, I had had lot of health problems, for years, and really misdiagnosed. I was 20 years misdiagnosed before I was diagnosed correctly with an autoimmune condition, that affected my spine. And because the spine is the center of your body, if you have an autoimmune condition or an inflammatory condition that affects the center, the axis of your body, if the center of a system is not healthy, you will experience after effects of that dysfunction in every other part of that system. All right. So when I was 40 was when I was like, what gift can I give my 50-year-old self? Now, in fairness, when I was 40, I also took this baller ass trip. I took 9 trips to places in the world I had never been before, including one trip that was just like super sexy. I was a road cyclist avidly at the time. So my friends and I took our bikes. We went to Croatia, hired 2 pro cyclists and 1 local tour guide, and just went from island to island and rode our bikes, like every day. It was amazing. Had beautiful, sexy nights and amazing days on the road. I realized that I had to get some freedom in my body. Right. So at 40, I was like, by 50, I got to have this physical, whatever is happening in my body, figured out and sorted out, addressed, because I had a strong knowing, even that the doctors were like, we're not sure what's happening. We don't think there's anything we could do for you. I kept just being like, I'm sorry. What would you do for Kobe Bryant? My connective tissues and joints and bones were like disintegrating. What would you do if I were Kobe Bryant? And if they didn't have an answer for that, I was like, you're fired. This was clearly before Kobe Bryant passed away. And so I was traveling the world and started to get answers, started to see doctors in different places and get answers that led me not just to heal in my physical body, led me to heal in my true center, freedom from trauma. One of my medical doctors who helped me repair the bones and joints of my feet and ankles, which were truly disintegrating at the time, also sort of introduced me to the idea that there were ways physically that you could begin to treat your brain from the effects of trauma, including ketamine. And so between 40 and 45, I actually went through 6 sessions of intravenous, like IV into my veins, ketamine with a medical doctor in a medical way, that began to help me codify the work, the inner work I had been doing into bodies of work that other people could use and do too. Began to help me. I describe it, I use Michael Pollan's way of talking about ketamine and integration of trauma. It was like I had already done 25 years at that point of talk therapy, of every kind of, medical alternative well-being therapy, trying to figure out what was happening in my body, a lot of which was reactive to my trauma. I know, no, my childhood trauma. So as I experienced So I strongly believe that the experience I had of ketamine for healing from PTSD, um, I believe that that experience was, it was like a multiplier on the inner work I had already done. By then 10 years or so of sitting on, getting up in the morning and doing my own daily ritual practice that I now teach to my own, students and members. Um, all of those years of therapy, all of those years of like spiritual work and psychological work, I truly do believe that the ketamine became this incredible force multiplier on that work. Not only did it help me, not only did it do what Michael Pollan says, which is to cause, it feels like fresh snow has fallen over the ruts in your trauma brain. Not only did it do that for me personally, it also began to empower and clarify for me how these protocols that I had done in my own life needed to become bodies of work for other people. And it also helped me. I mean, it was like I could come out and see that the earth was kind of covered in this blanket or cloak of fear. I could see that the people I was working with in business coaching and consulting, we all had an addiction to commerce because we thought we were, by making money, proving that we were worthy of our existence or worthy of love. And what came to me through my experience, healing from trauma fully and finally, like it's not, I'm not actively wounded. I'm not walking wounded. I don't believe we have to be that way. I think that's a lie of culture. What I came to know in that time was that we are deeply beloved. That's why I use the word beloved so often. We are beloved of this universe, whether we ever make another fucking cent or not. Okay. And I realized in that time, I was like, whoa, this is why people do psychedelics and check out, because you see the game clearly. You see the matrix, so to speak. But I like to play games. So then I was like, oh, got it. Like business, money, these things they're not about proving worthiness. This is a creation game. And games are supposed to be fun. And when I play a game, I like to play to win. And actually, what I like even more is to rig the game, to transcend the game, right? So the gifts that I was giving my 50-year-old self when I became 40 were gifts of like really new ways of being in relationship with money. Really this time to just allow myself to be totally untethered, to decenter everyone and every other thing, from decenter all of the other gazes, not just the male gaze, the mama gaze, the anybody who has judgment gaze, to a time to untether myself from my job, from my profession, from that validation of having a really great, title that gets respect. I became untethered from needing to be extraordinary to prove anything, right? In that time, I became committed to and gave myself the gift of meeting my true sacred self in the fullness of my own power, coming to learn how to work with my own energies and dynamics through Jungian archetypes, through sacred money archetypes, through the human design system. And ultimately, at the end of that time of my life, actually when I was about 45, I got a surprise baby, my now 7-year-old London. And I just got very, very clear that I was going to do our lives really differently. It was like the ultimate do-over, right? I decided to move to Europe. I decided to create a life where she could surf and ride horses, and we could still have good internet, and we could live on a farm by the beach. All right. And so I want to tell you now and take a minute and just tell you about how you work with these questions. All right. How you work with this specific question. What gift can I now give my 10-year from now or 5-year from now self? Okay. Because there's a very specific backdrop you must create. There's a very specific atmosphere you must create within your own self and chest and mind and body for this question to do what it do. Okay. And it's going to challenge you. It's going to challenge what you've been taught. It's going to challenge what they taught you about how you need to be to earn your way into heaven. Don't worry. I talked to God about it. You're good. All right. The way you have to be, the atmosphere you have to create within you for this question to be as powerful and life-changing as it has been for me is you have to get very fucking self-centered. You have to do, I love that, who was it? Anne Morrow Lindbergh wrote this beautiful book years ago called Gifts from the Sea. And about modern womanhood, but I think the book was written in like the 1950s. Modern at the time, still the same. She talked about how the state of modern womanhood was best captured by this German word called Zerrissenheit, which was the state of torn to pieces hood, pulled energy pulled like spokes in so many directions. You don't have a center, you don't have access to that hub of energy. And so when I'm saying you need to create an inner atmosphere of being self-centered, that's what I'm talking about. And you have to do it before you start answering this question, or else it turns into this critical self-judging invitation for self-judgment, for regret, for avoidance. Oh, if you ask yourself this question without becoming self-centered in the way I'm going to tell you to become self-centered, you will come up with a bunch of answers that are about avoiding shit you don't like, avoiding unwanted catastrophes you've heard about. Oh, well, the gift I got to give myself for my whatever birthday is like, my accountant says it should be a 401k with X dollars in it. And then I got to stay at this shitty job that I absolutely hate and feel like plucking my eyebrows out when I'm there. No. Okay. You got to get self-centered first before you answer this question. So here's what I mean by self-centered. It's 3 things. You must create a backdrop of pervasive self-valuing. A commitment to do this self-valuing thing, a commitment to know your true self, love your true self, create a whole life that is congruent with your true self. That's how I define success in life, and that is also self-valuing, okay? From that place of self-valuing first, this is an activation sequence. This is what I call a breakthrough activation sequence. You have to do this in this order, okay? You have to become self-valuing first, self-aware second. So my students and members know that I am like ruthless in my self-awareness, which you can be if you start from a place of self-valuing, because self-valuing is self-compassionate, it's loving, it's lavish, it's I pour resources into myself. So you can, from that place of self-valuing and self-cherishing, commitment to never self-divorce, self-abandon, self-silence, then you can actually shine the light, a bright light of self-awareness, okay, using this question. And this, I think of self-awareness as I am committed to see what needs seeing and say what needs saying to myself about myself. See what needs seeing, say what needs saying to myself about myself. All right. That's self-valuing and self-awareness. All right. And then self-responsible or self-determining. You could be self-valuing and self-aware, but if you still think that somebody else out there is to blame, your oppressor, victimizing you, has power over you, has power to determine your life, doing something bad or wrong to you, as long as you are in a place of even one iota of victim energy, putting yourself down here and telling the story that somebody, someone, or something, or some toxic institution is in charge of you and is doing something to you, you will not get the benefit out of this question, right? Instead, I step into a place of like, I choose to let nothing be wasted on me, no experience be wasted on me, right? I can let lots of people, places, and things off the hook because I am supremely sovereign and powerful in my right now. Okay. And we'll talk much more about how to get there, because I'm not saying you got to let institutions off the hook necessarily. We need to require more of them for sure. But I am saying you can let nothing that has ever happened in your life be wasted on you as a self valuing choice, and put yourself back in the driver's seat of your life. Okay. Which you cannot assume. You cannot be in the driver's seat of your life if you are lying fetal on the ground under the fucking desk because you're reading what's in the headlines. Let me tell you something. All of this nonsense and toxicity that you see happening in the headlines right now, I know many of us, sovereign women who came here to be sovereign, let's call it that, people who came here to be sovereign in wonderful ways of themselves and their callings. Many of us we talk a lot about how the powers that be are trying to distract us from the dastardly shit they're doing. I say that the powers that be, the most powerful distraction they're doing right now is they're distracting you from your sacred contracts, from from that long list of things that you came here to be and do and have and create and experience in this life, which is for a good time and for a long time, but is not promised. Not one more moment of it is promised. All right. So when I think about this self-awareness thing from a place of self-loving, I always think about the story of the Buddha and Mara. Buddha, I don't know if people know this, but before he was the Buddha, he was like a trust fund baby, and his name was Siddhartha Gautama. And when he was in his 20s, like his parents literally sheltered him so much, they never wanted him to see anyone sick or poor ever. And then in his 20s, one day, he actually saw people outside the gate that were old and sick and poor, and it like shook him. And just seeing that shocked him so much, he became a monk. And he fasted and he meditated. He grew skinny and dirty. And he realized this wasn't doing shit. So we ain't got to do all that, y'all. All right, to be enlightened. So instead, he like decided to take up he decided to take up a course of self-isolation, to sit under the Bodhi tree. Okay. Now the sacred text says that Siddhartha sat under that tree for 7 weeks, for 49 days, which is very like, actually the word quarantine, right? We all are very familiar with quarantine in this season, is 49 days. Quarantine comes from quaranta, which is Italian for 40 days. So, it's not coincidental probably that Jesus also had 40 days in the wilderness, right? There are many sacred figures who had a 40-day period of self-isolation. What's more important than how long he was under the tree, though, is what happened when he was there. So the demon Mara, who symbolized fear and death, right? Fear, scarcity, unworthiness, got in the Buddha's face. This is before he's a Buddha, though, and tempted him, just like Satan and Jesus, tempted him to give up his search for enlightenment over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so first Mara sent this whole army of terrifying little warrior monsters, literally like an army of them. Then he sent his own daughters, who were apparently very voluptuous and like lusty women. And they tried to seduce Siddhartha. Then Mara reminded Siddhartha, like, hey, bruh, you are the son of this privileged family. You have obligations to your family. You have wealth and power waiting for you if you just get up from under this freaking tree and go home and give up. So for 7 weeks, Siddhartha sat still and focused and reflective and even killed and unmoved and impervious. And the texts even say that his energy was so like still water that when Mara's warriors flew at him in the air, Siddhartha's energy turned the warriors into lotus blossoms. So these lusty daughters of Mara were bodily cravings. These scary little demons were the fear. They represent our like inner chaos monsters, the things we're afraid to look at within. This idea of fulfilling your family duties, be a good son, be a good daughter, right? Family, culture, obligation. We know these demons. And his stillness, just sitting there, just being still, not running away, not recoiling, not avoiding, his level of stillness caused the shower of demons to turn into a shower of lotus flower petals. And finally, they say at the end of this 49 days, Mara just kind of got pissed off, right? And said, who do you think you are to defy fear and all of these other inner demons that have plagued humanity forever? And the story goes that the Buddha touched the earth beside him. If you see from this day forward, when you see statues of the Buddha, you'll see many of them have his hand like this, flat on the ground next to him. The story goes that the Buddha touched the earth and said, "The earth is my witness." Who do you think you are to transcend fear? The earth witnesses my authority to sit here and be still in the face of fear. Meaning the fact that I am a human being on planet Earth, the fact that I am offspring of the divine, beloved of God, a drop of God and this universe is my authority to sit here. It's almost like he's telling Mara that we belong here and we are worthy of everything good on this planet, even if we never perform or conform or produce or earn our way into worthiness. We can't ever lose our place here. And then they say that in that moment, all of his past lives, future lives, all across all timelines of him being every race and gender of human flashed before the Buddha. He became enlightened and he got up from out from under that tree. So I've heard that story a million times, but a while back I was about to teach it and I read something I hadn't read before, which was that for the rest of his life as the Buddha, like he became the Buddha in that moment. For the rest of his life, the Buddha would occasionally come, Mara would show up, kept showing up his whole life. Fear kept rising up his whole life. And do you know what they say the Buddha did every time the demon showed up? He made tea for him. The Buddha made tea for Mara every single time. Welcomed him with open arms, with hospitality. Can you show hospitality to those shadows within? Right? And when the Buddha made tea for Mara and served his demons, his fears, do you know what happened? Mara would just dissolve. I like that. Because we're not trying to totally overcome or mute or silence or outrun our shadows. Our work is to welcome our shadows, to let them have their way within us, their work within us, deliver to us. All of these unwanted emotions are delivering information and energy to us, information about what needs to happen, energy to make it happen. We have to let ourselves have 100% of our own experience. That is part of self-valuing. That is part of self-awareness. And when we do that, all of the shadows begin to dissolve and transmute into information and clarity and energy and wisdom. And slowly they stop blindsiding us, stop sidelining us, and stop derailing us, and we can start to get back in the driver's seat of our own lives. So here's how I work with this breakthrough question. I take my life, I look at my life, I get in that posture of radical self-valuing, self-awareness, self-determination, self-responsibility, and I look at my life right now. I make the assumption that no one and no thing in it is going to change. And I play that movie forward. Then I ask myself, are you good with that? Play the movie forward 10 years to your next milestone birthday. Are you good with that? Because that's going to be your life unless and until you give yourself this gift. And that's how I decide what gift I want to give myself. That's how I see what needs seeing and say what needs saying to myself about myself for the purpose of giving myself a lavish gift. All right. So I love that Joseph Campbell said 100 years ago, not really, probably 50 years ago, that where you stumble, there lies your treasure, right? I say, I paraphrase that to say, where you resist, there lies your treasure. So some of the questions, the follow-up questions I ask myself when I'm trying to come to what's the gift I'm giving myself are like, where have I been stumbling? What have I been resisting? What is the gift that I could give myself that would give me access to my treasure, right? What parts of myself have I been hiding or holding back? What parts of myself do I want to love back to life? What's the gift I could give myself that would do that? What feels shackles on in my life right now? Play that movie forward. What gift could you give yourself that would take the shackles off? Okay. This question works because it's so spiritually contrarian to the way everyone is doing everything about aging in this culture. All right. Mostly what people are doing is putting themselves on these like 25-year plans that will never play out like that because life doesn't even work like that. Life is not logical or linear or predictable, or the other thing people do at these milestone birthdays is look at their life and judge certain parts about it as bad or wrong or regret worthy, or they compare to other people and they try to chart a future course by trying to fix what they judge as bad or wrong that they've allowed themselves to become their lives. And they start assigning themselves a bunch of hard work or awful tasks that they hate. The gift question works because it's in the exact opposite energy. It's just in the exact opposite energy. It's not adrenaline based. It's not cortisol. Nobody would say regret is a gift. Nope. Nobody would say this terrible task list of shit you hate doing is a gift. So it's not even about forcing yourself or making yourself do some shit you hate because you think it's supposed to. It's not about checking off someone else's boxes. For this question to work, your answers need to feel like a big, lavish milestone birthday gift, not a new shackle or a new burden. Okay. So here's another big rule you need to have when you're working with this question. You get to decide what gift you want to give yourself, but then you let source, spirit, God, goddess, and all that is handle the how. Okay. Because it's not a gift if it's just another new to-do list. You don't have to figure out how to do it all. Just give yourself permission to want the gift you want and allow it to begin unfolding. From the time you decide what gift you want, everything you will see, a lot of your conversations and you will have this like butterfly effect of alignment begin to happen in your life, alignment to that gift. It won't be, if you let it be easy, it won't be as hard as you think it's going to be. You won't have to figure it all out on your own. Okay. Think all sorts of confluences and alignments will begin, events, circumstances, actual factual shit will begin to happen that is like all conspiring to bless you in wonderful ways that don't always feel wonderful because you're not the boss of how it's happening and you're used to liking to be the boss. But over 20 years of asking this question, I now can see how once I give myself, tell myself what gift I want to give myself or what gifts, almost everything that happens in my life thereafter becomes not an answer to like, here's how, but it becomes an arrow. Everything is not an answer, but everything is an arrow. Okay. So your gifts, I want you to think, I want you to allow your imagination to run wild because imagination is free. So your gift can be an experience you want to have. It can be a beautiful boundary you want to learn how to set. It can be a large upgrade in your inner work or in your outer possessions. It can be a skill you want to learn. It can be a kind of healing you desire, but it needs to feel lavish or you're not doing it right. It needs to feel like an if money is no object. If you could create how God and Goddess create, let there be light and there is light. It needs to feel like a delicious lick the plate journey into your imagination. This is an exercise of letting yourself want what you want in ways you may never have done it before. Okay, so this is like an opportunity for you to shine that light of awareness brightly. Do what Dr. Joe Dispenza says is like flicking on the, turning on a light in a dark room and seeing your shadows begin to dissolve in that light in wonderful ways that will bless and free your life. So now that I'm a few days, I'm a month and a half from 50 days to 50. I've been already asking myself this question all year. Actually, what's the gift I'm going to give myself on this birthday to my 60-year-old? What's the gift I'm going to give on my 50th birthday to my 60-year-old self? And at first I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Istanbul. I want to like lean into my James Baldwin bag, right? But then I started to have a bunch of, some conversations that became arrows where I could see that I'd been over responsible my whole entire life. So I began to give myself in advance the gift of lightening my loads, the gift of letting things be easier than I'd ever let them be. I decided to give myself a house. So I'm buying a house. I've had this vision of a storybook farm by the beach, and I'm buying that now. I decided to give myself a partner, the gift of a partner, but in this wild new paradigm that is a new thing. And it had been maybe a couple weeks but from the time that I've been single for years, gleefully, blissfully. I think there are a week or two went by from the time I started to make some commitments about, the kind of partnership I wanted before I was getting a text message from my now partner. Before my 50th birthday, we're fast. I decided this is the year of H's. I'm giving myself a house. I'm giving myself a husband. Did I just say that? A partner, but that's like an H word. I'm trying to keep the alliteration alive. I'm giving myself maybe a hotel chain. Like I've always wanted to be a boutique hotelier. So let's go. Let's do it. I'm probably giving myself a humanities PhD because I just love Jungian psychology. So I'm going to lean into it and go deep in it. Not in a way to prove anything to anyone, but because when I have conversations with PhD Jungians, I love it. And I've seen some programs here in Europe that would be delicious to do. And I'm doing this just to stay with the H theme. I'm doing this through the lens of like, how easy can I let it all be? How much can I create all of this or allow it to be created how God creates, right? When I was 30 and I was asking myself this question, I was still in a process of rewiring beliefs. I was wiring new beliefs in, and I did everything the hard way. I was still practicing every day, saying these certain things to create new beliefs so that I could let the old ones go without this big void. Now I'm in this process of creating that is like focused really on just dissolving the final remnants of my early life conditioning when it arises, which it does arise and surface when you say, I want a house and it shows up. When you say, I want this kind of partner and he shows up. When you say, I want a hotel chain, it starts to show up. When you say, I want a humanities PhD, and just things just start to show up. If you still have that old conditioning, it will rise up a little bit. Mara will come back. You will need to make tea for Mara. You will need to extend open arms, warm open arms, and hospitality to those old ways of being and thoughts, ways of thinking that you used to think. And you will see them dissolve. You will see them dissolve. Okay. So that's my first breakthrough question. These won't always be this long. Or maybe they will. I don't know. We're having a conversation about the single um, technology that has changed my life the most. I'm just wanting to share these breakthrough questions with you. I'd love to hear if anything lands with you, if it resonates with you, if you end up working with the questions, if you end up working with the gift question, come back and let me know how it went. Share this, subscribe to these conversations. Mostly I teach about like how to create the book and the brand and the business that becomes the empire of your soul, that becomes the a cornerstone of your freedom lifestyle. Um, but right now we're just having a conversation about what it looks like to become and be free. All right. I love you. I'll see you soon.